Hey everyone, my name is Reed Dinar and I'm a equity compensation associate with 3 years of experience working at Carta in technical support and customer success. I have been helping private companies manage their cap tables over the 3 years and just wanted to create this demo series going through the Carta platform admin instance so that you can better understand the tools that are within your Carta account. Try and help leverage those tools to the best of your ability and get the most value out of Carta as possible. So if you've seen my previous two videos, where I'm logged in currently is tour.carta.com. It's a tour site that allows for you to log in as a company administrator, an employee, or an investor. So we're just going to go back and log in as a company administrator. Like I had mentioned in my previous videos, I am a equity compensation associate with my CEP Level 1 exam from Santa Clara University. And if you need help managing your cap table, I'd be happy to assist. You can contact me at comp.equity@gmail.com. Feel free to shoot me an email, and I'd be happy to help your company manage your cap table, as I have just over 3 years of Carta experience and know the platform quite well. Again, the previous two videos, the first session was just an overview of the platform. The second session went through the cap table folder, as well as many options in the dropdown. This third session, I want to go through the securities tab. So here in the dropdown, you're going to find shares, equity awards, warrants, convertibles, review exercises, managed share classes, equity plans, security templates, and secondaries. This might be a little bit of a longer video, so I will try and split this up into sections so you can quickly toggle between them. But the bulk of our time is going to be spent under the top four options. Each of these I'd call maybe a securities ledger, where it's going to give you a breakdown of a security type, give you an entire ledger of that security type, such as like a stock certificate under shares, as well as give you the ability to draft new shares, equity awards, warrants, convertibles, etc. So I'm going to just dive in to the very first option, shares, and I'm going to go through an overview of the ledger as well as what it might look like to draft a new share certificate. And then I'm going to go into a little bit more detail under the equity awards tab where we're going to draft some options. I'll show you where the RSUs are found. And then not a whole lot of time for warrants. And I'll do a high level overview of convertible issuances as well. So thanks for bearing with me, but let's start here under the shares tool. Excuse me. So here, I would call this a stock certificate ledger, the share ledger. It gives you a breakdown of all the securities or stock certificates, preferred common share certificates issued by the company. By default, it's going to give you 50 securities per page. There is a little trick where you can go to the top of your page under the web URL. You're going to find results equals 50. You can modify that 50 quantity to maybe 100 to give you 100 securities in this ledger. But it shouldn't be too important. Here, you're going to be able to review security issuances. By default, I believe it filters newest securities issued to oldest securities issued. Something that companies are constantly doing within Carta is drafting, issuing, and then modifying securities. Carta acts as a transfer agent, so it does allow for you to modify and issue these securities in Carta rather than having to necessarily lean on your attorneys to do so. Some other cap table platforms are not transfer agents, so definitely a benefit of Carta. What I want to first look at is what kind of modifications can we make? So say we take a look at CS63, it's a common stock certificate issued to Tag Palmer. We have a status of outstanding, which means it effectively has not been canceled. So hasn't been transferred, hasn't been repurchased, hasn't been canceled by the company. There are a handful of different statuses, but outstanding means it's effectively not canceled. We have a quantity of shares issued, the price per share, transaction value, that's typically cash paid for, as well as the issuance date. So there's two ways we can modify the security. We could check the checkbox on the left-hand side of the security and go to actions at the top of the ledger. It's going to give us the ability to modify a certificate here, as well as a handful of additional actions. We could print the certificate. It's going to give you a PDF of all the relevant information of the certificate. I can try and see if this will generate quickly for me. Yeah, so since this hasn't been signed off by the company signatory, typically there's 2 company signatories per stock issuance. If they were signed off, you'd see a little electronic signature here. Then it should give you additional information as the employee signs off on the security issuance as well. So maybe I can look at a different security that have been accepted. Here, this one looks accepted. Let's see if it gives me a different view. Okay, so this is the view for the common stock certificate. What I want to take a look at now here is I can, this is what I was alluding to. Okay, so if I print the certificate with full details, it's going to give me more information than just the electronic certificate. So we get the 2 signatories here. And then it's going to give me information around the stock certificate. So the name of the recipient, email, the status of the security, share class, quantity, price per share, etc. A lot of information around the security, as well as at what point did each of these individuals approve the security issuance. So that's more so what I was alluding to previously. If the security has not been accepted, or say we're pending officer signature, the orange flag denotes awaiting officer signature, so that's a company that needs to sign off and approve on the security issuance. Green flag denotes the recipient needs to sign and accept the security. If I wanted to resend the acceptance email to the recipient, I could hit resend emails here. What I wanted to eventually dive into is modify certificate, but I want to touch upon these other 2 actions first. I could cancel the certificate here. It's just going to ask for a cancellation date. Reason, are the shares returning to the pool if they were maybe an RSA or a stock certificate that was associated with an option exercise, as well as any notes you want to provide with the cancellation. And then the other interesting thing here is the convert share class feature. This gives you the ability to convert from maybe a preferred share class to a common share class. Maybe there was some sort of preference on a preferred share class. If something had occurred, maybe some sort of transaction had occurred, the securities may convert to common. Definitely lean on your attorneys to better understand how this works, but it gives you the ability to effectively convert a specific security from a certain share class to a new share class. So maybe preferred to common is what I'm typically seeing. But let's go back to the share or stock certificate ledger. And I want to dive into one of the more common actions we see a company taking, and that's modifying the security. So I'm going to check the checkbox, go to actions, modify certificate. You can select clerical error as the reason or an amendment. If there was a clerical error, that means it typically was incorrectly, like the data was incorrectly inputted upon issuance. An amendment means there's a change on a given date. So I can select the reason, include a note. I believe that note will be sent to the stakeholder. I can next modify values. And here it's going to give me a modal with all the different fields that I can modify for this stock certificate. As you can see, we can modify a handful of different types of fields, some of which are not modifiable. For example, this quantity, we cannot modify this certificate because it resulted from a transaction such as a transfer. Typically, you need to contact our support team if we need to make modifications around transactions, as there's some back-end modifications that need to be made. Pretty straightforward. You can look through this at your own time, and I highly recommend you log in at tor.carta.com and try and take a look at modifying a security, because this is going to be a pretty common practice for most companies. If by chance there is an incorrect input or we need to make a change on a given date. Not going to dive into the specifics around all of these fields, but it's pretty straightforward to modify. All you need to do is select a field, check a checkbox, say the cash paid wasn't $900, it was $1,000. Oops. $1,000. I'll just check the checkbox, input my new value in the column on the far right, scroll to the very bottom, select Next, Review Modifications, and then Apply Modifications. It's going to give me information stating that this specific recipient's not receiving a notification. Depending on the modification, it may require notifying the recipient or the shareholder, but it's pretty straightforward. Another way you can modify a security is just check the 3 vertical dots to the right-hand side of the security over here on the right-hand side of the ledger. It's going to give you a handful of additional actions that we didn't previously see, some that are similar, but modify certificate, add a vesting schedule, repurchase shares, transfer shares, cancel certificate, convert share class. You can add some notes, resend to officers, print certificate, or terminate the stakeholder here. So pretty straightforward. If you have any questions, definitely contact Carta support. They can walk you through step by step what you need to do if you say need to transfer a certificate or repurchase shares from a certificate in full or partially. It's not too bad. Before I dive into what it looks like to draft shares, I'm going to just touch upon this manage share classes option here. We can create and edit a share class. We can manage authorized shares as well as request a stock split. I'm not going to dive into these, but definitely something that maybe your attorney would assist with. Typically, the authorized shares are coming from articles of incorporation. That's relevant around maybe a new price round. You close, you need to create a new share class and update your cap table. You would want to update your authorized shares to make sure that there's enough shares for that specific share class for issuance. Again, typically relevant around a raise, and we do support stock splits. So if I want to, say, issue a new stock certificate, I'm going to come here. There is a quick option up here in the top left-hand corner under Essentials where it says Draft Shares. So it'll bring you to the same exact location. But what I typically do is I navigate to Securities, then Shares, then Draft Shares here. All right, so there's already a draft here. We can create a new draft. It will allow for you to have as many draft sets as you'd like. So I'm just going to create a new one here. Does this draft reflect a new investment round? So this is kind of what I was alluding to. If there was a new, say, price round, we're creating a new share class. It might prompt you to create a new share class. It's going to default to the specific date that you're creating the draft set. So I'm just going to leave it as is and create new draft set. It's going to create effectively an Excel spreadsheet looking page where every row is a different security issuance. So it gives you the ability to issue many securities all at the same time, draft and issue. And then all the column headers, everything with an asterisk is a required field for issuance. So it's a little bit tricky to scroll to the right. You can grab this scroll bar, or I have a specific mouse that lets me scroll. But I'm just going to scroll over. There are a handful of required fields. Typically, the last required field that I see is the federal exemption. Yep. There are a handful of additional fields that you could input if you would like for additional documentation and records. But what I typically see, the last required field is this federal exemption. Most of these fields are pretty straightforward. The name of the recipient, the email, the stakeholder type. Are they an employee? Are they an investor? Stakeholder type would be individual or non-individual. So individual such as an employee, or non-individual such as an entity, maybe an LLC or LP or what have you. Relationship, again, employee, investor, board member, consultant, etc. The specific share class is the stock certificates being issued out of. If you want to provide a specific certificate number, by default, it's going to give you the next number available. So if CS50 was the last stock certificate issued and we're issuing out of common, the next security issue is going to automatically default to CS51. The quantity of shares issued, the price per share, cash paid. Is the security issuance associated with the conversion of a convertible note or safe? Debt canceled, currency, board approval, issue date, Rule 144, vesting start date, vesting schedule, acceleration terms, build legend, federal exemption, so on and so forth. Typically, companies are able to input the majority of this information on their own as they're providing this information to their attorneys. The only Information that typically needs legal advice is the Rule 144 date field, as well as the federal exemption. Here, I don't believe Rule 144 is required for all security issuances, but federal exemption looks like it is. So if you need to get more information about what a specific field is, you can select a cell, and there is an option with a caret on the far right-hand side of the table that lets you expand. And if you're selected on a specific cell, it's going to give you a definition of that field. So it's going to give you information on what is this Rule 144 date, what does that specifically mean? If I have questions around federal exemption, I can select federal exemption. It's going to give me some information as well as a support article. That'll give me context around all the different federal exemptions we offer in the dropdown here. But again, if you have questions on what to input here, chances are you're going to need to consult your legal counsel, but there is some assistance that our support team can help with, guide you in the right direction, if you would. Not a whole lot I want to dive in here other than that. You could export an Excel spreadsheet so you can input all the data into Excel and then upload to Carta as a singular Excel import. You can download the draft set. And then once you're ready to issue a security, let me just input some random values and see if it lets me issue the security. I'm going to issue a tag. Palmer gives me the email. Okay, let's say just use employee. Let's see if we get lucky here. US dollars. Let's say it was approved this past Monday. Also issued this past Monday. No vesting, no acceleration terms. Yeah, let's see if this gives me an error. So you can review. It wants me to include a build legend. Let's see. Go default. And it may require Rule 144 date. Yep. Okay. I was curious about that. We're going to go the same date as issuance. Let's check for errors again. All good. So if I want to release these securities to the company officers for signature, I can do so by selecting review. And let's go ahead and collect signatures. So what that's going to do is it's going to send it to the company stock certificate signatory. I believe it's Emily is what we saw previously. All right, let's go back to the ledger. We're going to see that the security was issued. We got CS 63. Excuse me, CS 64 is the one we just drafted with the $1 price per share, 100 shares issued. And it's going to be pending. We have, Emily signing off on these security issuances. Once Emily signs off, it will go to tag. So what I just did there is I hovered over the row and it highlights in blue. You can select the row with your mouse. It's going to give you a modal. Some details around the security issuance. You can toggle through these tabs on the left-hand side in the Navy section. It's going to give you some of the data that I inputted in that draft. And again, you could print the security from here as well. So this video is getting a little bit long. I believe I want to get through the other security types, and I'll leave the additional review exercises, managed share classes, equity plans, security templates, and secondaries. I'll leave that for a separate video. But let me just dive through warrants, convertibles. I'll dive back to equity awards at the end here. So warrants is another security type you can issue within Carta. Not very common. It's effectively kind of like an option grant for an investor to sweeten the pot around raising, say, a convertible note or raising cash for a round. That's typically what I see here at Carta. I don't see a whole lot of warrants issued, but the investor effectively has to exercise the warrants for them to convert into shares. Now, convertible notes and safes are quite common at Carta, as you'll see them issued in a friends and family round or seed rounds to help companies raise cash early on in their company life cycle. So we do see both security types. Typically, convertible notes, I'm seeing interest rates associated with them, and I typically do not see interest rates associated with safes. I'm not sure if there are caveats there, but it's pretty straightforward to draft a safe or convertible. We have the ability to issue a safe through Carta as well as provide all the money movement through Carta. Really nice capability here. So I can go to safe financings at the top of the page. It's under the fundraising section here. But it will allow for you to issue a safe through Carta with all the legal documentation. Super seamless. I'll dive into this under the fundraising section later on. But really great security type, very easy. Typically don't need a whole lot of attorney involvement with it, but if you do have questions, definitely advise your attorney or consult your attorney rather. If I just wanted to draft and release an existing convertible note or safe, it's very similar to the share certificate. You just go to the black button that says draft convertibles. You can input all the information around the convertible issuance. Everything with a in red and with an asterisk is required. Once you input all the information, you should be able to check the checkbox and hit send to release it for company officer signature. Now, very similarly to the other security ledgers, but there's a little bit more complexity here, is the equity awards ledger. It's going to give you a handful of different security types at the top of the page here. We have option grants, we have RSAs, restricted stock awards, RSUs, restricted stock units, SARs, CBUs. Typically not seeing a whole lot of issuances around RSAs, SARs, or CBUs, but mostly options and RSUs, depending on the company size and valuation. Option grants are very, easy to draft and issue just as a stock certificate. The process is almost identical with a handful of different inputs, but some of the similar inputs. Similarly, you can modify the. Wait for a moment. I had to turn off that alarm that was going off in the background, but pretty straightforward. You're able to modify the security similar to any other stock certificate, warrant, convertible. You can select the three vertical dots, modify option grant, or check the check boxes. What I didn't mention earlier is you can modify multiple securities at the same time by checking the check boxes and selecting actions. You can modify the option grants here. All right. So there are a few additional tools here. We have the ability to review the ISO 100K rule, which is something under the compliance and tax section. Request repricing, or again, you can draft options similar to the drafting stock certificates I showed previously. Let's just create one. There's one caveat, one real difference here between issuing a stock certificate and an equity award, and it's going to ask if you want to perform board approval through the Carta platform or not. Yes, there are other differences, but it's going to ask which plan is it coming from, and do you want to create a board consent through Carta or not? By choosing yes, a board consent will be automatically created and sent for approval once the draft set is completed. So this is really nice. You can have your board consent not only created, drafted, but also signed and approved through the Carta platform, which is really nice. I'm not going to go through the whole process, but it looks almost identical to drafting a share certificate with a few varying fields. Again, each row is a different security issuance, and then every column header with an asterisk is required. So let's see what we're finding. Grant reason's a little bit different. Exercise price, what's like the price point if an employee wants to buy those shares, if they want to exercise their options so they convert to shares. Expiration date of the grant. Typically, there's a vesting schedule associated with option issuances. Documents. There are required documents for an option issuance, so you can create a draft set or add your own documents here. These are the required documents, the top three. You'll need to have a form of option agreement, a form of exercise agreement, and an equity incentive plan document in order to release an option grant for company officer signature. Can it be early exercised? Exercise periods. And then again, the last required field is federal exemption. So definitely consult your legal counsel on what this rule may be. But again, we have this bar on the far right-hand side of the page. If you expand it, it's going to give you some information around the field. So what is early exercise? Where are acceleration terms, exercise periods, etc. At the top of the page, you're going to show the existing equity plan and then the available shares for issuance under the plan. It looks like for this 2024 equity incentive plan, there's just over 42 million options or shares available for issuance. So as this fills up, if you do not have enough options available for issuance, say I had 50 million that I'm trying to issue, it should throw an error. Yep, we'll have 7 million over the available for issuance. So it's not going to let me release this security. But yeah, there's not much more to the option grant issuance. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this video and create a second video for the rest of these tools that you see below in the securities folder. Thanks for your time today. Appreciate it. Again, if you need help managing your cap table, you can contact me at comp.equity@gmail.com. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. Plan on releasing a video or so every day over the coming weeks. So yeah, thanks for the time and see you in the next one.